Free practice 1 and 2 have concluded in Baku, Azerbaijan, and we saw an excellent Ferrari in first and second positions and Hamilton in first position, which is something that should surprise us a bit considering that we've seen Hamilton struggle up to now, and now here in Baku, he seems to be finding the right direction again. He also said it in his statements yesterday on Thursday, aiming for the podium here in Baku, also considering the simulations he did with Ferrari. In today's video, we are going to analyze the free practice sessions, see where this great performance from Ferrari comes from, and whether it's something that will only last on Friday, or if it will evolve over the weekend, and if we'll see a Ferrari that can fight for the podium, and maybe even for the victory. Before starting, obviously, I remind you to subscribe and activate notifications so you don't miss any videos on Formula 1 and Ferrari topics. Leave a like if you enjoy the videos and to support me in the work I do. That said, let's immediately look at the times. First and second positions. First Hamilton, second Leclerc in free practice 2. And if we also look at the standings, we see Hamilton in first position with 1 minute and 41.293 seconds. A great time considering also the fact that this year softer tires are used. So yes, they have improved a lot compared to last year, but last year they used harder tires. This year the soft is the C6, so the soft C6, the medium is the C5, and the hard is the C4. Leclerc second, 74 thousandths behind Leclerc. Moreover, at a certain point Leclerc set his time with soft tires. Hamilton was 10 behind, 2 tenths back with medium tires. This is because, in fact, the gap between the two tires is just a few tenths, 2 tenths between soft and medium. Third Russell, who was a bit unwell on Thursday, wasn't feeling very well and so was a bit fatigued too. Had to take a bit of paracetamol to recover. And we have Antonelli close in fourth position attached to Russell. This is crucial given the period that Kimi is also facing. Not very good, let's say, in terms of results. Then Behrman fifth, sixth Verstappen, 6 tenths from the Ferraris. This is noteworthy because the winner of the last race, the one who was supposed to bring Red Bull back to the front, well, at this moment was struggling a bit more than usual. It should also be said that he has always struggled a bit more in Baku compared to, for example, Perez. It's not one of his favorite tracks, unlike Leclerc, who loves this track. For example, 7th Lawson, 8th Khan, 9th Albon. But the real news of the day is 10th Norris and 12th Piastri. And why are the McLarens so far back? Well, it's not something random, because the McLarens have always lifted off in the last sector before improving their times. Both Norris and Piastri held back and also made several mistakes. Let's see together first. Hey, Norris's mistake. Do you want to show it? Because it's a naive mistake, guys. You go to damage the rear suspension at a time when you can't afford to make such a mistake. Let's see together. We are 30 minutes to the end of free practice 2 and Norris makes this mistake. Look here. He goes out of the corner, losing the rear with soft tires and touches the wall. And here he touches the wall heavily, thus damaging the suspension arms. Why is it a serious mistake? It's a serious mistake because you ruin the whole session. You can't continue. 30 minutes are left to the end. It's a free practice that is crucial. Free practice 2. There are just the right conditions for the race, and so you effectively ruin your weekend by making this mistake here. On the other hand, your teammate made small mistakes, some lockups. He also brushed the wall, but didn't go so far as to ruin the car. Didn't damage the car and therefore didn't force you to repair the car and lose time. Here, Piastri didn't do it, Norris did. This is a symptom of why we also see a stronger Piastri even in the fight for the championship. He makes fewer mistakes in the most important moments. Norris, on the other hand, even if this weekend seemed to have more pace compared to Piastri, made this mistake here that will affect the weekend. That said, there has been a lot of talk also about the difference between soft tire, medium tire. Let's do a little recap and clarify this situation here. So, then we will also look at the telemetry to analyze everything in detail. Well then, regarding the soft tire and the medium tire, we see that, for example, Leclerc, here we have him framed with soft tires, was very strong in entry, while he struggled more in exit. Hamilton with medium tires was stronger in exit and struggled a bit more in entry. How come? This is because Baku is a rear limited circuit, so the rear tires are consumed a lot, but more than consumption we talk about overheating, so the rear temperature rises a lot. This means that the rear slides a lot. How many slides have we seen in these two sessions? So many. many who go to brush the wall on the exit because the rear slides a lot. By mounting softer tires compared to last year, because I repeat, Pirelli has brought the C4, C5, C6 tires here, which are actually softer than last year's. The C6, which is the soft tire, is not made for Baku. It's too soft for this track. It's a track that doesn't allow you to do the whole lap, pushing to the maximum on the exit of the corner. You have to try to dose the throttle on the exit in such a way as not to overheat the tires, so as not to slide the rear and have the tire for the whole lap for all three sectors that I show you here. We see it on the map here next to me. I move to the other side and you can clearly see that they are all 90-degree corners in the first sector, and then there are many guided corners in the second sector where you need to have a rear that doesn't slide too much. But also in this section here where we saw some mistakes, particularly here on the exit, be careful because you need to have the rear that doesn't slide too much. Otherwise, you really go to touch the wall seriously and maybe damage the car or even compromise the session, as happened with Norris. So this is to say that the difference between Leclerc and Hamilton is that Hamilton has a cleaner driving style compared to Leclerc. Leclerc is more similar to Max in this. He wants an oversteering car, enters aggressively with aggressive braking, carries the brake into the corner, and then manages the rear on the exit. In these scenarios where you need to have a tire that doesn't overheat too much on the exit, driving with oversteer stresses the tire a lot. On the contrary, Hamilton, who drives a lot, drives with oversteer here, but in a cleaner way compared to Leclerc, doesn't stress the tire as much. In fact, we saw Hamilton having more difficulty in braking, if we want, compared to the difficulty on the exit. Here, for example, I show you here a long run by Hamilton. Here we are in the final part of the circuit. We see that here he goes long at that corner I mentioned earlier. And here he struggles with the soft tire. He couldn't find the apex well and then went straight, locked the front tires. So the best configuration for Baku would be to have soft front tires and medium rear tires. This way you can manage the rear and the front has more grip with the soft tire, because inevitably, obviously, at the front you have a softer tire, you have more grip on the front, you can brake later, but the rear suffers. So this discussion is to say be careful guys, because tomorrow with the qualifications we might also see someone setting the time with medium tires, and we shouldn't be surprised because the medium is equivalent to the C5 tire. So it's still a very soft tire. And we'll see if it will be Ferrari to maybe differentiate the tire, choose a harder tire for the qualifications or not. I expect that, for example, McLaren, which has a lot of rear grip, will choose the soft tire at the back. But we have seen some mistakes here and there from their drivers, so maybe they could also risk the medium. That said, let's first look at the telemetry, so the difference on the fast lap and then also on the race pace. And I show you the configuration of the Ferrari rear wing, because we have seen two choices with the rear wing. We can say cut, trimmed, where the IBM logo is back there. You see it has been cut in two ways depending on the aerodynamic flows coming from the engine cover area. And you see that the air is directed differently. They used two different specifications, Leclerc and Hamilton. Hamilton also tried two different choices, and so we see here the difference between the two wing choices. We will see what Ferrari's final choice will be. The fact is that they are differentiating a lot at Ferrari. They have differentiated the choice of tires, the strategy on how to set the time. Hamilton did sometimes with medium tires, Leclerc with soft tires. They alternated the tires, and then also the choice of the rear wing. I also show you, just for the record, here in FP1 when Hamilton returns to the pits due to a puncture on the front left, due to contact, but nothing serious, nothing that damaged the suspension as Norris did, but only touched with the front left tire. Here I also show you, here's the moment when Hamilton touched the wall. Let's see if we can see them together. At this moment here, we see here Hamilton on board. Here we are in the central sector. We see that he arrives here. Maybe it's still the first sector, by the way. Yes. And we go further. This corner here, he goes to touch the wall. Here you can clearly see the contact with the barrier on the left side. That said, let's quickly look at the telemetry to make a comparison. These are the battles in F1 in the various sectors to show the dominance. We can say how much the different teams dominated in the various points of the track. We see that Ferrari is very strong in the final part, also thanks to tire management. the central part is McLaren, and we also see that McLaren's sector is divided between Norris and Piastri, while for Ferrari, the reference time is Leclerc. Guided part, guys, McLaren, there's no doubt, remains the strongest, the most agile car. But Ferrari performed very well in traction and also in corner entry. In various braking zones, Ferrari was really strong. Plus, in terms of top speed, Ferrari is there. I'll also show another guide on the rear wing. These are all the ones used by Ferrari. On the left, we have the less loaded wing. On the right, we have the more loaded wing. Here we see the wing used in Baku by Ferrari, which they then modified by adjusting the higher flap according to the aerodynamic flows, as we saw before, and I'll show you. Let's see here, just a moment. I wanted to see everything I needed to show you. Top speed here of the various teams. We see that Ferrari isn't even among those with the highest speed. On the contrary, we have Racing Bulls and Tsunoda, whose car was running a very low downforce setup in FP1. McLaren also surprisingly is up there at the top of the standings in terms of top speed. Ferrari is average, we can say. The slipstream also matters a lot. So pay attention to the times we've seen in the standings, because the slipstream definitely affected the final time. Let's see the gap also with telemetry before the flying lap, and then also the race pace. That is the differences between the various teams. Here we have Norris, Piastri, Leclerc, Norris orange, Piastri white, Leclerc red. And I want to show how in the central sector McLaren is really strong. Makes a big difference, especially in free practice 1. It went very strong. In free practice 2, it recovered. But be careful not to underestimate McLaren, which remains a reference point at this moment. Ferrari is very strong in the last sector, thanks also to the long straight and also the tire management, because it doesn't overheat the tires too much. So this is a plus. Ferrari is also very strong in braking, and in various braking zones, it manages to bring a lot of speed to Leclerc in entry. So this is a lot, and be careful not to underestimate McLaren. This is fundamental because we haven't seen the full potential of the Woking team. These are the times in FP1 and potential. So with a clean lap, with the best sectors, how much the different teams could improve. We see that McLaren is more or less at the limit. Ferrari with Leclerc could improve by 0.2 and Hamilton was behind. But also because in FP1 he had a more difficult session, also due to the contact with the wall, as we saw before. So I also want to show now the lap times so we can do an analysis of the race pace of Ferrari. But first, let's also look at the various team radios that say a bit about modifying for Leclerc, who did the race pace with soft tires, going to do lift and coast for the brakes. So there's always brake management, brake temperature management on a track like Baku is felt, especially in the first sector, with many braking zones with 90-degree corners. Pay attention to brake balance, pay attention to lift and coast for the brakes. Meanwhile, Hamilton was quite confident in his simulation. He didn't talk much with Riccardo Adami, so he found him more relaxed, we could say. Let's see the times here of the race pace simulation and see how the difference between Leclerc and Hamilton, which we see in the central part, is that Hamilton did many laps with medium tires. Leclerc did all the laps with soft tires, obviously stopping and also modifying the load and fuel, and also doing several laps with used tires. We see that they did a lot of qualifying simulation. Race pace was done at the end by Hamilton, doing 46.4, 46.2, 46.2, but only 3 laps. And also Ham and Leclerc did 46.1, 46.3, 46.1, a sign that the difference between the two Ferrari drivers at this moment is really minimal. Leclerc and Hamilton are on the same level, and it's something we haven't seen for a long time. Since the start of the season, we can say that a Hamilton so strong on Leclerc's times, on a track where Leclerc has conquered 4 poles in a row, 4 consecutive pole positions. Well, that's a lot, guys. We have a very strong Hamilton. Thanks also, I think, not only to the motivation that matters, the will to bring home the podium in this race, which is fundamental for Ferrari, but also a technical motivation. In fact, Hamilton manages to handle the rear better than Leclerc on limited tracks, and this is something not to be underestimated, and it's a factor that also affected these free practices. We saw it. Besides this, obviously Hamilton then gets excited, and when he sees he's going strong, he manages to bring out the best in himself. On the contrary, drivers like maybe Piastri, Verstappen manage to be more lucid even when situations don't go well and manage to bring home the best result. Hamilton is easily influenced by the result. That's why we saw a demotivated Hamilton before the summer break. It makes sense he's like that, and I really like Hamilton for this. I mean, he's a driver who really gets you pumped when he's going fast, who motivates you even as you're watching him. Leclerc is a bit like Hamilton in this regard. When things are going well, he gets excited. When things are going badly, he's a bit defeatist, if you will. But Hamilton is very much like that, very, very much so. That said, let's also look at a substantial difference in times between Verstappen, Norris and Leclerc in FP1 on the qualifying lap. By the way, they set a much higher time in FP1 compared to FP2, where they significantly lowered the times. If we look at the difference between Ferrari, McLaren and Red Bull, we see that Red Bull struggles a lot in the middle section and loses a lot. A Red Bull suffering from this chronic understeer struggles with the curbs, while on the contrary, Ferrari struggles a bit more in the middle section, but not as much as Red Bull. And in the first sector, Ferrari is faster than Red Bull. That's a fact. McLaren was very strong this morning, which is why I say not to underestimate them. In FP2, they struggled a bit more, and we see that in terms of speed, they're a bit less than their rivals, but not so much that others can take advantage. That said, let's review the FP2 standings together. Then I'll also show you the FP1 standings to quickly look at them together. 41.2 for Hamilton in front, 74 thousandths behind is Leclerc. And then the others are separated by 4 tenths Russell, 4 tenths Kimi, 5 tenths Behrman, almost 6 tenths Verstappen. In short, the gaps are very wide. This indicates that Ferrari is going strong, did well in these free practices, but the others have hidden a lot, so be careful to take these times with a grain of salt. Meaning that Ferrari, in my opinion, had a good start to the weekend and is very promising also for Sunday's race. In my opinion, Ferrari can have good qualifying tomorrow and confirm the result on Sunday. The goal obviously now is pole position because Ferrari has shown it has the cards on the table to do it. In the simulations done at Maranello, there were positive results. Hamilton himself said it. And so this is also seen on the track. And Hamilton highlighted a good quality of the SF25 is the mechanical grip at the rear. In fact, the biggest flaw that cannot be seen in Baku of the Ferrari is the chronic understeer. In those corners where more steering input is needed, that's where Ferrari struggles, and coincidentally or not coincidentally in Baku, there aren't these kinds of corners. There aren't these kinds of corners because they are all single steering input corners. The first sector is all 90-degree corners, the second sector too. They are all very tight corners in terms of angle. The last sector is the same. In fact, Ferrari, if we want, struggles a bit more in those corners where more steering wheel rotation is needed. That's where Ferrari struggles. That said, I think I've said everything there was to say. I'll also show you this graphic here. Wait a moment. Actually, yes, we've already seen this one before in the end on lap times. I have to say we've seen it. Here it is. This is another graphic of the long runs. In fact, Piastri soft tire, Verstappen soft tire, Leclerc soft, Hamilton medium, Russell soft, Antonio Lee soft. We see that there are very few race pace laps. They are not even indicative. We see that Piastri ran very strong. It must be said, especially in the first lap, then he raised the pace. But Ferrari also went very strong, even more than Piastri, so this is reassuring. It must be said that McLaren has clearly hidden, and it will be interesting to see where Red Bull is compared to Mercedes as well. At the moment, it seems McLaren and Ferrari are playing another sport up front, and then we see Red Bull, and then Mercedes, or maybe even Mercedes in front could be. It depends a bit on Max too. Whether they'll be in the fight will also obviously depend on how the third free practice session goes. So, what have we understood from these sessions? The C6 tire, too soft a tire for Baku, and will probably be discarded by many teams, so pay attention to this. Strategy 1 to 2 stops. Probably 1 stop, but all teams keep a set of soft tires, because the safety car will definitely come out in Baku, so we must not exclude this possibility. And obviously pay attention to the race pace, the overheating of the rear tires, all these factors that then affect. If I have to take a risk today, I tell you that Leclerc can still take pole, so I bet on Leclerc's pole, and I tell you that behind probably Hamilton and the McLarens can arrive. Even the McLarens can take pole, this is for sure, so definitely pay attention to Piastri more than Norris, who had a few problems. Norris, in terms of speed, is there, but he continues to make small mistakes, and in Baku, they weigh a lot. That said, the pole is contested by both Ferrari and McLaren. Tell me your opinion in the comments. I'm curious to read and respond to everyone. Obviously, tell me your predictions. Tell me how you saw these free practice sessions. How do you see this Ferrari performing this weekend, which seems to be going strong? Baku, as we also said this week, is a friendly track for Ferrari. So if there's a chance to bring home a good result, even for the Constructors' Championship, let me quickly show you the standings. Just a reminder of the 20-point difference between Ferrari and Mercedes. So if there's a track where you need to bring home points, it's Baku. That's for sure. Russell isn't at 100%. Kimi is struggling a bit more during this period. So if Ferrari manages to bring home a podium with both drivers, it's an important haul for the Constructors' Championship. And watch out in the Drivers' Championship because Piastri could pull away. Okay, having said that, I think I've analyzed everything. So we'll see how it goes in the next free practice sessions that we'll analyze tomorrow. Free practice 3 and the qualifying. That's all from Rasta, guys. I obviously remind you to always subscribe, activate notifications so you don't miss any videos about Formula 1, about Ferrari. Like, if you enjoy the videos, and tell me in the comments what you think about the free practice sessions we've seen. That's all from Rasta. See you in the next video. Bye.